Hey everybody, here we go again. We're doing another recording about Mary Jo Robinson and her life, stories that have impacted our lives. And part of the motivation for doing this was kind of like a memorial, somewhat, but I've always had a dream about making some kind of a website that would allow family and friends of departed loved ones to be able to just tap in and hear stories about a person's life that they miss and love. And, Mary Jo Robinson impacted a great many lives. And I thought, well, I think this would be a perfect way to kick off this sort of a thing. And I also wanted to create a space where Mary Jo's family and friends could come in and listen, contribute if they so desired, or maybe even as an introduction to people who have never met Mary Jo, but who have heard of her, and to get some background insight. Um, the gentleman I have with me today is Paul, and he knew Mary Jo very well for a long time.
I did.
And I'm wondering if the same last name has something to do with the Hinderscheid clan. So I appreciate your being here today, my friend.
Thank you. Blessed to be here.
Yeah, right on. So I'm going to just hand it over here, brother. You care to share some stories or some memories about Mary Jo?
Yes. The first thing I have to do, and I know you do this too, and my mother always did it, and it is so hard, but like when I go and speak and I play professional harmonica and play and everything, and it's like a lot of times we always take credit for things when our ego and people hear us and see our talent and everything. And Kansas, the band,
Mm,
they have a line in their one of their rock songs that says take no credit for our talent because it comes from up above. And that was one of the things that Mary Jo did a lot, was people would compliment her and she'd always deflect it to God. And I'm guilty sometimes of taking my own ego and absorbing things, but that's how I wanted to start off: as all my talent, all my accomplishments, all I live and breathe for uh, is blessed by God, and I'd be nowhere without him. So to start off, give him credit where
mhm.
credit is due, because all my talent, I was gifted from a child, had a very, very hard life. um, my mother, Mary Jo, was very sick, and of course, is alcoholic. And uh, now we can laugh at some things. Like I tell a few stories of our childhood that I remember. Like one of Mary Jo uh, had a blackout, and we got up on Easter morning looking for our Easter baskets, and we tore the house up. And my mom was drunk and, oh, find your baskets, kids. Well, she had had a blackout and never put them out, so the house was all tore up. But that's what growing up with an alcoholic mother. I can remember that I went to a Catholic school, and my gym teacher told me that I had to get gym shoes. And I went home, and Mary Jo was having a couple of drinks, and I said, Mom, I need to get gym shoes. And she's like, I can't even afford you shoes. Why would I buy gym shoes? And just kind of weird, weird, funny stuff. But um, it's amazing that my mom, I remembered so many things that she used to say to me. And one of them was, every time you use, you become somebody you're not.
Mm.
And people sometimes chase their whole life to be somebody they're not. And it's great when you get to God's gifts and get to that raw person, that real person, and that. I mean,
Amen.
and so that's a miracle. And like I say, our family has an amazing story. My mother did a transformation One of the things I remember is that she spoke. Me and her spoke at Hazelden for over 8 years, and I used to introduce her. And but one of the things she would talk about is that um, she was like, supposedly this guy told her she was the best counselor in Minnesota and all this stuff, and she tells the story of how she was depressed and getting back to her old self, and she was just confused, and she was driving around the old mission, and she saw a parking spot there, and there was a guy in there that she didn't like. He was British or something, and but my mother went and plopped herself in her office and started to talk. And one of the things that happened that day was he asked Mary Jo, "Did you really ask God into your heart?" And she had been a counselor for a few years and was on top of the world getting her fat, but that step wasn't done. And that day she did that, and that changed her life. And that depression and that all, because it's not what we have. It's, like I say, I worked at Hazelden for years, and so many people came in the paper kingdom. I mean, it looks, all the things we strive for and all the things, sometimes it's empty when you're using. And so that was a miracle for Mary Jo. And there's so many miracles, as you know. The day my brother Mark was killed by a drunk driver, and people try to always explain things away from the spiritual and the godly things in the world, because we're so used to material and things we can see and touch. And the day of my brother's death, he had his 2 kids in the apartment, and they were supposed to go along with him. They had the whole day planned. And that morning, my brother woke up and locked them in the apartment and left without them. And my mom always knew, and I knew, that was a God thing. Those kids weren't supposed to die that day. And then, as we know, you've heard the story of, she got to face the young man that killed my brother in court. And the courtroom got silent, and the judge looked at the young man and said, "Son, you now have to face the mother of the man you killed." And my mom walked right up to him and lifted his chin up, and he was shaking, and she looked him in the eye and she said, "I love you, dear, and I forgive you," and turned to the judge. And that was a powerful moment, and that was another thing we talked a lot about in our meetings, in our lecture, was about forgiveness. And I find it funny that so many people, the step that tells you make a list of people you've hurt and make amends to them. And it's amazing how they never include themselves on the top of the list, because who would you hurt the most? And they never forgive themselves. They feel that everybody else deserves forgiveness, but God forbid I forgive myself. And life doesn't work that way. If God loves you and you're his beloved, you have to think of yourself that way too. Otherwise it doesn't work. That's when the devil gets you, is when you stop believing in yourself, or that you deserve the love that everybody else deserves. And so I just wanted to make that point, is that that's a huge, powerful thing. That you had to forgive yourself. I had to forgive myself. Otherwise, it's just that huge roadblock, and it's not a real, true spiritual life unless you can do that. And so I love that about my mom. And oh gosh, there's so many things I could talk to. And if anybody wants to ask a question, or I can't see anybody, but I just can see you. But if anybody wants to ask a question or anything, they're welcome to.
I should have been more clear. We're actually just us. It's not a live presentation.
Oh, okay. All right.
Yeah, I really would love to do a live one at some point, because, well, I just think it would be fun, I guess, and useful.
Yeah.
And I'm really, really, really hoping people will listen to this recording. And man, some of the takeaways you've already dropped, are huge. I'm going to go back and listen to it too, and not just for editing, or not just for posting it, but yeah, Paul, sorry, I wasn't clear about that.
Well, that's
Um,
okay. Oh,
yeah, I don't really know how to do the live ones yet. I've thought about it, but I'm kind of a chicken,
yeah.
and um, I think I'm gonna just have to do it now. Just gonna have to go on Facebook Live or do something live and just say, it doesn't matter what it looks like and who shows up and who doesn't, but
Yeah.
I will take that step forward. And now that I've said it out loud, I'm stuck. I gotta do it.
Yeah. Yeah. But everything's a progress. Everything's, progressive, and this is a huge start, and this is a huge miracle. Like I say, I'm blessed to talk about stuff. It's like I think of stuff and it's like, oh my gosh, all that's happened in our family's lives is just amazing. I mean, I went from my dad, Mary Jo gave me up when she was 10 years old and went to a state mental hospital,
St.
and
Peter.
Hastings.
Oh, Hastings. Okay.
Yeah, beautiful place. And most people went on a Sunday to go to church. My dad would make us go down to the mental institution and go see mom, and in a very scary place. And about 15 years later, guess who else was up in there? That'd be me. And I was very sick. I got abused uh, so much that I started to abuse myself. I thought, I'll beat you to the punch. And I really, like I say before about God taking the credit, giving God the credit. Oh my gosh, did he pull me out of things? I look back. I mean, I was chewing on chewing on glass, drinking gas, and blowing flames out of my mouth at parties. And I was jumping out windows. I was just doing crazy things because I didn't have a will to live. I did try 2 suicide attempts, and God was just there picking me up every time. I didn't know it at the time, but now I know. It's like, yeah, that was him watching my back. I shouldn't be here. And then to go from that change to wanting to die, and then wanting to help people live. I mean, what a difference God can make and recovery can make, to take a person that wants nothing to do with living, and is actually trying to help himself to die, is going to go and lift some person up out and want to make them feel alive and blessed. And that was a gift that God gave me and Mary Jo. I was working at 100,000-watt radio station, and that was another God thing. I produced a public service announcement for drinking and driving, and I didn't even know why. And then now I know it was a God thing, but all it said was, if you choose not to drink and drive, the Minnesota Highway Patrol is behind you 100%. If you do drink and drive, whether you like it or not, they're still behind you. And I sent that in, and it got accepted by the Minnesota Broadcast Association, got accepted by Roger Letting, who was commander in chief of the Minnesota Highway Patrol back then. It was used at the state fair, played at every radio station in Minnesota. And 9 months later, Pat, my oldest brother, who is calling me and saying, Paul, Mark's dead. He was killed by a drunk driver. And I thought he was joking at first, but then I realized, and how weird that I would write that PSA 9 months earlier about drinking and driving, when that wasn't a motivation for me, but God put that in my heart. And that was just another miracle that God has interjected in our lives. And
I had not heard that before, and I don't think I've heard. Here's a picture of Mark. I've got him in the background here.
yeah,
I don't think I've heard the part about Mark locking, the kids in the house when he left.
yeah,
That's the
both
first I've heard that. Yeah.
both the kids were there. They had the whole day planned. They're going to go get Pat at the airport, go out to Mall of America and have breakfast and everything. They were there to go with Mark that morning, and he just locked them in the apartment and left them.
Huh.
And they're right at that age where they're old enough to be left alone, but that wasn't the purpose of the day at all. That didn't make any sense whatsoever. And some people say, they still say it didn't make sense, but we know now, yeah, it made God sense that
Mm-hmm.
they weren't supposed to be in that car. So God intervened and stopped that. And so that's amazing. One of the things I did for my mother, and there's so much, I'd love to have the opportunity again, that because there's so much to our story, but one of
We
the
can
things,
do a part two. Maybe the part two will be live. How's that?
there you go.
If you don't mind being the guinea pig.
Yeah, no. But
Okay.
I got my mom, I set up for her to go and meet the Vikings. Because as you know, she was a huge Vikings fan. In fact, in the lecture, she talks about how uh, she was all bummed out because during the divorce, my dad got custody of the Vikings tickets. And so, but I got her to meet the Vikings and everything. And as we were getting out, there's a guy there, John Gross of Channel 5 News. And he was covering a story of another boy that was there that day, meeting the Vikings, that was shot in a shooting in Minneapolis. And Mike Tice, the kid, had his Viking jersey on and was shot. And Mike Tice went to the hospital and gave him a new Vikings jersey and then invited them out. And he was there that day, and John Gross. But John asked me about my mom, and I started to tell him about Mary Jo and introduced him, and they just clicked. And John Gross, I'll have to show it to you sometime, or maybe we could play it somehow, but did a story on Channel 5 News on my mother and the Christ Center and all her life. And he interviewed me kind of, and I played my harmonica on there. But anyways, he was filming outside, and I was talking about my mother when she passes away, that how they're going to have to probably keep the funeral home open for a while because there'll be so many people there, and that my mother's helped over the years. And as I was talking about her death, he's filming outside, and this orb comes into the picture. You'd have to see it to believe it, but this
Oh, I've
beautiful little,
seen orbs. They're the strangest things, but I've seen them. Yeah.
yeah, this even John, he's been filming for years, been in the with Channel 5. He's retired now, but he was even amazed at it, and he just fell in love with Mary Jo. And it's a really powerful story. It's a neat story. They did really well, and they paid for us to go to a Vikings game. We got to go to the Vikings game, and she was so funny when it came to the Vikings, because you gotta love them even when they play stupid. That was her motto. But yeah.
There was a friend of mine who passed away, and she was from the Friends of Lois Wilson group that I had attended. And she, when we went to the memorial, I saw a big pink orb in the room, and I sensed it was full of love, and it descended on both of her daughters, first one and then the other. And it spent more time with the one daughter than the other, and I think the younger one, because she probably needed the most help. But she was saying goodbye and saying, "I love you." I could just sense that, right? So and I've seen orbs before, but that was probably the most spiritual, emotionally connected one that I could feel. It didn't come to me or anything, it only went to her daughters, but
Yeah.
it was just the love was huge, and there was this was like a portal that opened a different time, though. I was listening to a fellow who had lost his wife to an alcohol impaired driver, and it was at the 2018 MAD function, and he was in such grief, and it was still fresh enough for him to where it was difficult to even articulate a lot of things. I think over time we learn to, you know, form a few words around our emotions that maybe are a little difficult at first, you know, but as he was talking, this portal opened over his shoulder to his right, and she was there. Her face was there, and the sunlight of the spirit was on her face, and this beautiful wind of love was blowing, kind of not blowing her hair like a big commercial or anything, but you know, and she was just full of love for him. And he continued to talk, you know, and she was in this beautiful, blissful place. And you know, and he probably couldn't see it. I mean, I don't know if anyone else saw it. I didn't go around and ask people, but on rare occasions we have these things that happen, right? And I had a dream about Mary Jo about 6 months before she passed, and she was in this field with a bunch of kids, and there was a kid on her back riding her shoulders, and she's running around and she is happy. You know, Mary Jo, there's no way she could cure. I mean, she had, you know, problems with her knees and hips and what have you. And even though she had surgeries and stuff, there's no way she could have done what she was doing in that dream.
Yeah,
And there
yeah,
was just pure happiness, you know, and pure health. There was nothing wrong. And I knew she was going to leave. I knew she was going to pass away. But there was not one iota of sadness in me in that dream, even though I knew, you know, it's like, wow, you know, and what was kind of sad for me is that after she passed, no one even told me. I didn't even find out until everything was done. I don't know if God spared me, if or what was going on with that, but
yeah.
um,
And which was amazing was exactly what I said in that news story about them having to keep the funeral home open. Oh,
mhm, mhm,
that's what happened because there were so many people there that and would come up to me and say, "Oh, your mother saved my," you know, and I know my mom would say right away, "I didn't, God did," you know,
mhm,
that's how she was. But yeah, it's amazing to find out that the world is not just a materialistic, simple, explained. You know, I remember an old timer at Hazelden told me one time that um, science deals with what and how, and spirituality and religion deal with who and why. And that's a much greater
amazing.
challenge.
Mhm,
And when you start getting connected to that, and that's what I learned from another old timer too was, you know, people go to treatment. That's all they drill into them is not, don't get high. And if you can remember when we were little kids and we got those, when I was a kid, it was the red ball flyer tennis shoes, but we'd get a new pair of tennis shoes and we'd run around the neighborhood because we felt those shoes made us run faster and jump higher. And we got a natural high off of that.
mm,
And I believe that one of the biggest things in the program is learning to get high without drugs, learning to get high with God, learning to get high with loved ones, learning to get high at the sight of a grandchild or a child smile, or giving something to someone out of the blue, or doing a random act of kindness, or other. There's so many highs out there.
mhm.
And so if anybody tell you know, we know that old saying, dry drunk, where these people they're sober, but they're not there. They're not working the program like they should be. And when you meet a spiritual person like my mom, oh my gosh, people get in trouble when we spoke at Hazelden because they, for 3 hours after, they're over there talking to my mom and wanting her to stay and talk and hug, and they said they'd feel her spirit in the auditorium and God's spirit, and it was pretty amazing. It was a gift.
Wow. The you know, I considered it a straight up miracle when I heard her speak the first time, and she said some of the things you mentioned. You gave me a little more clarity as to some things that I guess I never had locked in about the continuum, and you know, I think, I don't know, every time I tell my story, there's always something a little different, and I might not remember everything perfectly, and I think I am, but whatever, we just go with what we can. But I, for some reason, thought Mark was coming back from the airport. I didn't know he was going to the airport to pick up Pat, for
Yeah.
example. And I remember Mounds Boulevard, 94, I remember that part. And so I had it factually inaccurate to some degree. And it's like, well, you get the main point of it all. But the next time I repeat the story, I'll have it right. But I remember one time speaking at a mad candlelight vigil, and I mentioned Mary Jo, and I always do when I tell my speeches. And afterwards, a woman was really angry, and she says, "Why is he telling her story?" And the people that have been upset with me in life are actually the ones that have helped me the most. So I am not complaining here. And that's the serious truth. The people that have said I'm doing something wrong or whatever, it's helped me the most. Seriously has. And I thought, I'm not telling her story. Her story became part of my life. It's my story, you know? And but I felt like I needed to have the clarity around that, though. And this woman's complaint helped me have the clarity, say that her story became a part of my life. That's how important her story was, and the alignment of it. And I totally get the idea that you've repeated several times, and it's worth repeating all the time. The first commandment is to love the Lord thy God with all thy heart, soul, mind, and strength. Number one, right? And putting the attention back to God is that's what that is. And then loving others as we love ourselves is the second great commandment that Christ talked about, which is really just in the shadow of the first. It's related to that, right? It's a resonation of the first commandment, because if you really love God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength, how can you not love yourself and other people? But letting the love in, it took me years, and Mary Jo put me on that path, with the mirror therapy thing. And, look in the mirror, she said, Timothy, because I was going to kill myself. I wanted to. I wasn't going to, but I wanted to, maybe I would have. I don't think so. But I joined mad at her intercession, I'm going to call it. And I thought it was going to be a good thing after, I went to the first panel to just check it out. And there's all these higher coincidences, synchronicities, and scripture says out of the mouth of two or three witnesses, all things will be established. And there are so many witnesses and higher coincidences, there's no accidents, right? And I just saw the writing on the wall. This is what God needed me to do. And it was really obvious. So it was God doing for me what I couldn't do for myself. And so I'm not trying to give Mary Jo the credit, but she was an instrument. We can be an instrument. And I'll pray about that before I speak. Ask that God make me an instrument of his mercy and his peace and help someone. And I heard this guy say, I know, sorry, I'm going on a bit much here, Paul, but I heard this fellow say, he's passed away now. He was a really irritating guy in the 12-step program to a lot of people. I kind of liked him, but I probably liked him more than most people did. But he would say, well, if you don't like something I say, take it up with God. God's the reason I'm alive, and I thought, perfect. I need to incorporate that into my emotional, spiritual schemata. And but likewise, if they like something I say, don't give me any credit there either. All credit goes to God. And you don't like something I said, blame God. If you're going to blame someone, blame God. I'm not here because of me, and that whole big picture, first things first. That used to be my least favorite slogan. First things first, because I heard that as some kind of a pious judgment. Like, who are you to decide what a first thing is, you know? And I just didn't know what first things were, and I didn't have it delineated in my consciousness. Let's put it that way. I was doing it, but it was an accident of God that I was doing anything right, because I was always falling uphill, you know, so you don't fall far when you fall uphill, you know, so
Yeah.
you fall downhill, that's a problem, because then you don't know if you're going to stop or not. So, yeah, you're sharing some really useful. You know what I'm going to do, Paul? I'm going to take some of the things you mentioned. I'm going to actually try to type them out and maybe put them in a story format in a script, you know, if that's okay with you.
Sure. John Gross
Mhm.
wanted me to, he came up and interviewed me. I just have never edited. It's been sitting on a computer for like 2 years now, 3 years. And he's in a book. It's a powerful story, but you know that Chicken Soup for the Soul?
Mhm.
There's a sports edition of that book, and he's in it, John Gross from Channel 5 News. But it's amazing. I was working at a 100,000 watt radio station in Laverne, Minnesota. And mom, Mary Jo, called me one day and she said, "You have a gift from God too." And she told me about a treatment center. She said, "I'd like you to get into the field that I'm in." And she told me about Pine Shores. She said, "They take hardcore people." Yes, they did. Attica, San Quentin, Joliet, Leavenworth, Vice Lords, Crips, Bloods, all street people, probably 85% African American. But I call up there and I'm like, I'm music director at a 100,000 watt radio station. The heaviest thing I had to lift was a record. I'm old school, but so I call up there and I said, "Do you have any job openings?" And they're like, "Yes, we do." And I'm like, "Any full time?" And they're like, "Yes." "And what do you have?" "Night janitor." I'm like, "Oh gosh, mom, thanks a lot." So I quit a 100,000 watt radio station and got a night janitor job at Pine Shores Treatment Center on Lake Pokegama by Pine City, where my mom used to live. In fact, George and Mary Jo, I guess, met there on a retreat back when it was the
Wow.
man. And I worked there over 6 years. I started a pilot program that a living skills program for street people. And but it was a very interesting place to work. And there was a friend of my mom's, JR. He was old classic. He'd say stuff out of his mouth to these guys that I couldn't believe. And I'm like, oh my gosh. But one thing he did tell me one day, he says, "Paul, you know why people use, drink, and drug?" Like, trying to think of a, you know, philosophy answer. And he's like, "Because they want to." And that was his answer. And a lot of the stuff that he said was old school, but it did make sense. In fact, he's the one that told me that old saying. I don't know if you've ever heard it or remember it, but it's, "I cried because I had no shoes until I met someone with no feet."
Yes, I have heard that one.
Yeah,
It's been a
that's the
long
whole.
time, but yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And in our case, have you ever heard the saying, "I'll knock you off your high horse"?
Yes.
You know where that came from?
No.
That was Saul rode a big white horse, and God struck him off the horse and struck him blind.
Oh, I never heard that it was a tall white horse.
Yeah, he rode a
Huh.
big horse, and he was a very mean man, very bad,
Mhm.
and God God
Huh.
used him, got knocked him off his high horse, and so that's
Hmm.
like, sometimes it's hard for us not to get on a high horse, especially you've met these people. Sometimes they get in recovery, and all of a sudden they put themselves on this pedestal, and all of a sudden they don't give God the credit, and it's all about them, and that's not the program. It's like, Martin Luther King said, "You can never be rich as long as there's poor." And it's very true. And that's like the
Mm.
coolest thing to me about the program is lifting other people up and seeing them grow. And That's a miracle. In fact, I went from Hazelden, went from Pine Shores to Hazelden, worked there for over 6 years. And then I went to Delwood to work with teens because nobody wanted to work with teens. And if you could read the letters that I got from these kids, they used to call them miracles, and they started calling me the miracle man. But some of these kids were going to go commit suicide, and then they met me and heard Mary Jo's story and saw God in me and realized that there's something better to life. And it's amazing when you can pull somebody up and like Mary Jo did with you and so many other people, but knowing where the credit comes from.
You know, that I didn't even really finish that story. I distract myself often, so it's nothing new. But about the mirror therapy, she said, look at yourself in the mirror, point at yourself, look yourself in the eyes, and say your name out loud, and say, Timothy, I love you, and do it every day until you mean it. And, you know, I told her I was going to quit MAD because I wanted to kill myself after speaking, and this isn't why I sobered up, you know. And I want to celebrate sobriety. I don't want to go speak and then want to kill myself, you know, because of how I felt. And she, you know, she said that thing she says to people, you know, you're walking with the enemy and the enemy is you. You know, you need to love and forgive yourself. And then told me about mirror therapy. I thought it just sounded like kind of new age drivel or something, pop psychology or whatever. But I had a lot of respect for her. I mean, this is a guy that hugged the guy that killed her son and said, I love you and I forgive you. I mean, come on, you know, I had to respect her and other people in recovery who would say, do this or do that. I did my best to just do it, whether I understood it or not. So the next morning I did it. And she said, do that before you do anything else. Nothing else first. You don't pee, no cigarettes, no coffee, no conversations with your honey or whatever it is, you know, this first. Kind of like rewiring your brain or something, you know, or your soul, if you will. And, but when I did that, I ended up cussing myself out, Paul. I called myself all these names, you know, and you're a baby killer, you're a scumbag. And I just, you know, just went on a horrible roll on myself. I didn't know how bad that was until that moment. And because I thought I had adjusted okay, not even close. And then when I looked in the mirror, I could kind of, the miracle was that I could see myself like I would see someone else who was in pain. That was the God moment, I think. And I realized if I saw someone talking to the guy in the mirror, if I saw someone talking to another human being that way, I'd absolutely try to help. I would try to step in and say that you can't treat a human being that way. It's wrong. It's horrible. But I was doing it to myself. But it's like that moment of clarity going, oh my God, she was right. I'm the enemy. But it took me 8 years of doing that daily. I very rarely missed a day. I'm sure I probably missed one, you know, or two or three, who knows how many, but not many. Seriously, I was hard at this. And I probably didn't even do it perfect. It might not have been the first thing every day, but I really was working on this. And it was 8 years of recovery. And one day I looked in the mirror and I pointed at myself, looked myself in the eyes. I said, Timothy, I love you. And I meant it. And I was just shocked because I like saw this glow of white around my person in the mirror. And so, you know, it's got to be psychology that allowed me to do that, whatever it was, or else maybe it's real and I could see it. But there was a spirit of love that was around me. And I couldn't see the ex-convict. I couldn't see the killer. I couldn't see all the things that were wrong with me, you know, at that moment. Not that there wasn't anything wrong with me anymore, but if there was at that moment, I couldn't see it. But after that, I never wanted to kill myself after speaking at MAD, you know, and then it was just gone. It was gone. It's not to say what I did was right. I think sometimes people think
but
that
it's
you're
not who you
escapism.
were.
Right, right. That was the other guy, whoever that guy was.
Yeah. And that's that whole thing about uh, what is it about the evil wolf and the good wolf, and
Mhm.
we choose which one we feed. And
Amen.
and it is true that you knew Mary Jo. People would be calling her mom after like meeting her one time because of just that radiance. And for people out there to know, another miracle about Mary Jo was that in 1999, two cancer experts gave her 3 months to live and said, Mary Jo, you need to get your life together. And she had lymphatic and bone marrow cancer. And at her age and the way she was, that should have been totally true. But Mary Jo looked at him and said, you won't tell me when I'll die. God will take me when he's done with me. And she ruptured her spleen. She had all kinds of other things happen to her, but she passed away in 2006. And she was supposed to only live 3 months in 1999. So, I mean, we don't have all the answers.
Right on.
The earth and the world is bigger than you can imagine. And
Mhm.
that's a huge thing to realize that, you know, uh, if we walk the path through God, miracles can happen no matter what. We can overcome everything. And that trials and tribulations, that
Mhm.
make us who we are. And that, you got to go through the swamp to get to dry ground sometimes.
Mhm. I was at church after church one day, and I was like going to speak that night for Matt, or maybe the next day. I don't know when, but I was, contemplating hard. What can I do to tell a more, useful story? How can I help people more? It sounds really good on the surface, right? You know, but then I heard that voice, and I've heard this voice a few times in my life, and this time it said, "What? You think you can do a better job with little Timmy than me?" You know, that, oh, okay, all right. And then I just quit worrying about how good the speech was going to be or not, and my intention was good, but, putting, putting the focus back on God is like, that saying they have in the program when they say, you can't give away something you don't have. I don't think I buy that. It's like
Yeah.
I have given away more things that I didn't have before I gave them. It's like God gave it to me at the moment and it came out of my mouth and I go, I didn't know I knew that. Where'd that come from? Well, you know where it came from. So you can give away something you don't have. If you've turned your will and your life over with the care of God, how can you give away anything that is yours? See where I'm going with that?
Yes.
It's not possible to be off the spiritual path. And it doesn't mean that I'd never do anything wrong. Don't get me wrong there. But in God's economy, nothing is wasted, is something Bill W. said. I say it in that context. And but there is two things that kept me from during the dark night of the soul. You've heard of the dark night of the soul before, right? The book by St. John on the Cross and all that. But when I was going through a really difficult part of my sobriety, the alcoholic that was in my life that I love so much, I left the relationship. I felt like God told me to, and I did it, not in a perfect guideline. Literally, I thought I was supposed to be there one more year. I was there 13 more months. I waited that last month. I was fudging. It's like I really didn't want to do it, but I bailed. And then I felt horrible, but I did it because I felt like it was God's will, right? And then she ends up going through a lot of pain. She had been relapsing and stuff. And to make short story shorter, she did end up drinking herself to death. But Mary Jo, um, I'm sorry, not Mary Jo this time. My sponsor in the other program, because we don't mention those things here, if I can avoid doing so. A friend of Lois, my sponsor said, she's holding on to the bottle and you're holding on to her. And if you don't let go of her, you're going to drown with her. She's drowning. and she won't let go of the bottle, and you're holding on to her, and you're going to go down with her. And somehow that little snippet of wisdom gave me some clarity, but I had prayed about it, and I felt like God told me to leave in a year. Well, odd. I mean, God pulls the timelines up. And but there was 3.5 years where I was suicidal. In the first 2.5 years, I wanted to die every day, all day, and I would beg God to kill me, but I couldn't kill myself because of the third step. I had turned my will and my life over to the care of God, so it wasn't mine to take. So I'd beg him to kill me. It's like, please, just get me out of here. I mean, and we can laugh about stuff, right? But you see the humor in that. But the other reason is something along the lines of partly why Mary Jo said to not quit MAD, and to why I get involved in the first place even is what you're saying could help someone else. It's not all about you. What about the person that you could still help, right? So I knew if I killed myself, I wouldn't be here to help someone. What good am I if I'm gone, And so the third step, not my life to take. And secondly, when someone else is suicidal and they're going through it, if I fail to go through it, I won't be there to help them with what it's like to have gone through it. So I just, had to do it, stay alive for that reason. But, those are my reasons. I don't really know that they're good reasons. Maybe it's what God put in my head, said, well, I'll keep you alive somehow, you dip, and, but here I am after cancer and after a whole bunch of things and, um, and still kicking it for a few more minutes. I don't know how much longer I have, but
You know,
I'm so grateful for even this time here where you and I get to talk,
do you know what one of Muhammad Ali's sayings was? He said, "Don't count the days, make the days count."
I
And
didn't
it's
know he was the one that said that.
Yeah,
Huh.
that was
Okay.
Muhammad Ali, and
Mm.
I used to when I worked at the kids treatment center. Um, a lot of the kids were complimenting, suicide and low self worth and all that. But uh, you've gone fishing, correct?
That's it's on my bucket list. I haven't since I was somewhere between 12 and 14, and I loved it, but I haven't since.
Well, you'll have to come up. That was another God thing that I was homeless for so many years, and God brought me together with my wife Rita, um, and we found an abandoned lake home, and so now we've been here 25 years, and it's gorgeous. It's amazing. We got eagles flying by. We've got pelicans. We've got everything's coming back now. That miracle of spring migration and everything. But the reason I was talking about fishing, I used to tell the kids that when you go fishing and you get night crawlers and you fish with a worm, you go to put the worm on the hook. What does it do?
Squirms.
It fights for life.
Mm-hmm.
And here, God installed the will to live in a worm. It's not like you go through a dozen worms and then like keep putting them, then all of a sudden one worm goes, oh, just take me, and doesn't. Every worm struggles for life and has a will to live. And I find that pretty amazing that God can instill a will to live in a little creature like that. A worm's an amazing creature. And yet us as humans, and supposedly the smartest creature on the planet, can want to take our own lives. And that's the devil. That's a devil that gets into people's heads and tell them you're not worth it, and you don't deserve it. You don't deserve life. And you don't. And that's that great evil that goes on in the world for so many people. I do police training. I worked at a martial arts school for years, and I listened to the scanner religiously. I watch Live on Patrol. I don't know if you know what that is. That's on Facebook, but it's Bob Fletcher. And
Yeah.
but I listen to police radio, and mental illness is at an all-time high. It's really bad in today's society because of that. we're taking God out of this nation, and where God we take out, the devil's going to step in and do his best to take people. And I want people to realize that to be that worm, somebody, when the devil tries to put you on that hook, squirm and fight for life, because you deserve it. That worm deserves it, and God puts a will to live in a earthworm, that we should have that will and that spirit. And it's, you never saw a U-Haul truck behind a hearse in a funeral procession, because you can't take that stuff with you. It's what
Right.
our kingdom is, what we give away.
Hmm.
And you realize that now. I mean, all the people that you've given to, and it's just a miracle that when you can do that stuff. And now I have people, like I say, you're welcome. We have a boathouse. It's a little cabin and stuff, and
I'd
there's
have to
30.
come up and visit you, throw a hook in the water.
It's amazing. I don't know if you'll see that. That's our.
Oh my goodness.
You see the guys out on the ice fishing way out
Yeah.
there? There's 2 eagles' nests right across
Wow.
from it. And
Dang. What a
all state
beautiful
land
spot.
across,
Really?
5
So
islands on the lake.
do they have any um cabins on the islands or anything, or?
Oh yeah, there's houses on the islands.
Oh, okay. How do
Yeah,
they come and go during the,
by boat.
but what about in between when it's like the boat can't quite do it because it's frozen, then? But
Yeah,
I just was wondering, because we were thinking about, if we could find an island somewhere. She didn't want an island because, well, how are you going to get on and off the island between, the melt and the freeze, So
you
I
gotta
think who needs
stock
to,
up on groceries.
right? That's my answer. Who needs to? Who cares?
Yeah,
But,
yeah.
but yeah, it looks gorgeous. Is Pine Shore still a happening thing? That's
No,
long gone, isn't it? Yeah.
it all shut down. It was in a I got Channel 2 to do a special on it, but it was originally a tuberculosis sanitarium,
Hmm.
and it's got an amazing story. This doctor, he was an amazing doctor, uh, looked all over the country and found this island on Lake Pekegama on the northern Minnesota air, and the white pine helped beat the tuberculosis.
Wow.
And they had their own dairy cattle. They had their own um, vegetable garden, huge garden. They had a root cellar. They had a tunnel where they'd bring the food over to the patients. It had a morgue. We were just in it, me, my
Hmm.
little brother, John, and my wife and stuff. We were just in the old building. I worked there 6 years in the old administration building, which was beautiful. And it had the terrazzo floors, this giant fireplace. I mean, it was gorgeous, walk-in kitchen and everything. And the nurses actually lived there. It's amazing. The nurses lived
Hmm.
at the TB because they didn't want them going out and spreading the TB. But 80% of the people that went there were totally put in remission. And there's some amazing stories of healing at that place. And after it was trained people for the Redemption Fathers and priesthood. In fact, I can remember I was an overnight. I worked my way up to a detox tech, and Charlie Sam that's passed away now, but he was a Native American that I would pick up and bring into our detox, and he had never been in that building before. And one night I was there alone with him, and all the patients were sleeping upstairs, and Charlie starts going, "Go on, go on," and I'm like, "Charlie, what's wrong?" And he's getting all shook up, and he's like, "There's priest here, and I don't need a priest." And the hair stood up on the back of my neck. I'm like, wow, that's
Hmm.
crazy. But he saw a priest there, and it was a very spiritual building. But we went there. Uh,
Hmm.
I think it was last year, and they tore it down. Kids went in there and vandalized and started on fire. But it was Pine Shores for many years, and I started a pilot program called a Living Skills Program to help street people, even to fill out a job application. They would sober people up and throw them back in the hood And if you take the crack pipe out of someone's hand, but don't put something else in there to help them,
Yep.
It's worthless. So we had a satellite school, and these they'd go up there and they'd learn how to do a checking account, fill out a job application, get their GED, and all kinds of things. And it was a neat program.
What a chain of evidence that God is weaving in our lives.
I know, and it's like every once in a while I have to like stay grounded and realize, because it is easy to take credit for all this stuff. Like, what an accomplishment I am. It's like,
Well, I'm too dumb to stay unhappy for very long. That's the upside of not being the brightest bulb. But, it's funny how when I get out of the way, I get really smart.
yeah. And remember what my one of my mom's motto in life was? She always said that people need love the most when they deserve it the least.
Amen. I actually have that on a piece of art. Oh, I can't get it for you. We were packing stuff up to move, but I had it over my shoulder on the wall for years, and we had put our stuff in storage because we wanted to be moved by now. But it, finances kind of took a turn south, so we'll figure it out though. But I had that over my shoulder, and I love that saying. I found it in a Goodwill. I thought, oh, that's mine.
Yeah.
But it's, I think loving people when they're unlovable, yeah, I don't know. I think I fail people sometimes with that. I'll either from fear or insecurity sometimes, and I remember a guy was on his deathbed, and you know, and I felt like I really failed him because he wanted me to be there until he left, you know, and I couldn't do it. I had to leave, and the excuse I made to myself was, well, I'm supposed to be at work. My shift, I have to open the store, and I had told him, I felt like I was supposed to tell him, you just go to the light, it's going to be okay, and I don't remember exactly what I said to him, but he had like he was like staring off into a direction like he wasn't even there. And when I showed up and I was focusing on the spirit, his head slowly turned toward me, and his eyes lowered and looked into my eyes, and then it's like he slowly came back, you know, but he couldn't talk. He had no speech, and and I don't remember if I grabbed his hand or if he grabbed mine, but when I talked about going to the light, and it's okay, because I think he had a lot of guilt over things, and he was squeezing my hand so tight. It's like he didn't want me to go, and I left anyway, and like I had to pull my hand out away from his, and and I felt bad, and he had this look like, oh my God, you're leaving me, you know and I don't know, it's just not one of my bravest moments, but or I can even be afraid of a homeless person, sometimes, and sometimes like, well, I don't hardly have any money, and maybe I should give it to him anyway, and sometimes I do, sometimes I don't. It's the
Yeah.
sometimes I don't part that I kind of kick myself and wonder if I'm, like a hypocrite. And and I can't make everything about me and my hypocrisy, I don't know, but I don't know what to do with it sometimes, some of these things that I encounter, and I don't know how I can overcome that,
Yeah.
maybe. So,
It's hard. Where
yeah.
one of the old timers at Hazelden, this guy traveled all over the world, but um, one of the things he told me in a card, he wrote this little poem and it said, ring the bells that still ring. Forget your perfect offering. There's a crack in everything. That's how the light gets in.
During the dark night of the soul, when my heart broke, the light of God shone out from my heart. So I think in the center of our creation is God, inside my heart. And during this spiritual experience, I think you're right what you said. It's like a Leonard Cohen lyric too. I think he mentions that in one of his songs. But the way I experienced that is that like an angel had a diamond cutter in its hand, and it just came at my heart and it nailed my heart with this diamond cutter, and it broke my heart open. And my heart was black as coal. There was no light, nothing coming out of it. But when he broke my heart open, the light shone out, a white light brighter than the light of the sun. And then my heart fell back together, and you could still see like a whitish blue light coming out of the cracks. And I realized that the blackness of my heart was only on the outside, the stuff that had happened to me, but it wasn't part of me. It's the things that had happened to me. And, I feel like when we clean up our heart, then people can see it better. And we want to keep it clean. We don't want to let the things of this world collect on our heart, because then it gets darkened again. But what we are created to be has always been good enough,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And so, that just touches my heart to even think about how much, we are loved.
Yeah, it's amazing.
Yeah. Well, my friend, what do you say we put a wrap on this one, and maybe we can consider doing a round 2 at some point and find a way to play the recording or something, or the stories in the next one. Maybe we can even do the Channel 5 thing that was recorded or something. I'll try and collect them. If you can send me the videos, and I could try to download them to my computer, and then I'll put them on a screen share, and then we'll just share it and maybe talk about it and do Pat and Mary Jo part 2. I'm sorry,
Yeah.
did I say Paul and Mary Jo part 2?
Yeah.
And how's John doing anyway?
John's doing good. He retired
Good.
from law enforcement.
He did? Okay.
His son was just sworn in. He's a West St. Paul police officer now. Carter, my nephew.
Wow.
And he's doing good. He's getting married in September to a beautiful Filipino gal. And in fact, he's paying for me and my wife to go there, get married in Vegas.
Wow.
Which I've
Fun.
never been to. So that'll be
I've
interesting.
never been to Vegas either. I think I would have to go without my money or credit card. So that's the only wisdom I have about it. So
Yeah, I used to tease Mary Jo because she liked going to the casino.
she loved the casino, yeah.
And I was teasing her one day, and I said, "Mom, I think you have a gambling problem." And she looks at me and she goes, "I bet I don't."
Oh
So,
yeah.
so
The
I would
ultimate sense of irony.
yeah, but everybody's doing good. Mary Kay's doing good. She's still a nurse, and Pat's doing good. And I wanted to throw this out to you and get your opinion and see if you could maybe help me with this. But I got a crazy idea for Mad, and what I want to do, and could probably even get it donated, but I want to get a beautiful old hearse, and then do the Mad logo like on the back panel, and then maybe the hood. And then the whole thing will be covered with names of people that have been killed by drunk drivers. And of course, it's going to be just full of names. And then just go to like Mad functions or high schools, or just drive around so people for a reality check, a visual of people to see. And of course, Mark's name would be on there, and hundreds and hundreds of other names that would be on this Mad hearse to show all the people that have been had their lives ended by drunk drivers. It's
I
just a
think
little
that
bit,
would be a powerful tool. Yeah, I think that's
yeah,
a great idea.
reality
Wow.
check. Yeah.
I'd have to borrow the car sometime. I started Phoenix 490 for ex-convicts to run an organization, and Phoenix is, of course, a proverbial phoenix rising from the ashes of our old life, But the 490 is a little bit more uh, not obvious to people, but when Christ was asked, I think it was from Peter. I'm not a very good Bible thumper, sorry, but I think it was Peter that said, well, how many times should I forgive this guy who keeps relapsing? I'm going to put it into a language of recovery. This guy keeps relapsing and he keeps saying, I'm sorry and coming back. How many times am I supposed to forgive this guy? 7? And Jesus, of course, said this part we all know, no, 70 times 7. Well, that's 490, 490. So Phoenix 490. And but I'm kind of digging up some speakers and creating some workshops, and I'm going to try to see if we can dig into offender reconciliations and things like that. So, but
I always wanted to have a Christian-based radio station right in the prison.
oh, wow. Huh.
That spirit-filled radio that would be in the prison that people could tune in if they wanted to, and just have it upbeat, have stories of hope, stories of people coming out of prison and changing their lives through God, and just really having a powerful prison radio station.
Wow. That had never crossed my mind. I think I've heard of radio stations in prisons before, but not a Christian one. Not that I remember. I can't remember what it was, though. It
Yeah.
was California or somewhere I've heard of something like that.
Oh boy, I got all kinds of crazy
Yeah,
stuff.
right. Let's keep
Yeah.
brainstorming this stuff, man. Today's crazy ideas are tomorrow's best pragmatic approaches to issues that we didn't see coming. Maybe, I don't know. I'm like Mary Jo said, cockeyed optimist.
Yes, exactly. Well, thank you for
Yes,
giving me the
sir.
chance. We'll keep in touch. You'll have to go on my Facebook page and look at my pictures of our front yard. It's amazing what God.
Okay.
In fact, I do photography on the side and sell pictures, and on my card it says pictures of God's work, because I give him credit, because he's the painter, not me. He's the miracle worker.
Amen.
But, yeah.
I will do that. And then when I create the YouTube video and maybe put it on a couple other places, I'll look for some pieces of art or something. And, if you have a picture of Mary Jo and you or something as well, maybe you could send that to me.
Oh yeah.
If you happen to have it. No pressure, just a thought. All right, brother.
Take
Catch you
care.
on the rebound, man. Thanks for being here. Appreciate you, man.
All right.
Take
God
care.
bless.
Bye-bye. God
Yeah.
bless you.